think I'm getting distracted.
Hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk about something that I struggled with for years, and a lot of my students have struggled with it as well, actually practically all of them. So if you're a creative person, odds are you've had to confront this at some point, and you probably know what I'm talking about. It's learning how to work and learning how to avoid procrastination. Fortunately, there are a number of things that you can do that I've tried out over the years, and I've also worked on them with my students that I've found to be incredibly effective. So this is a problem that you can definitely banish forever. So here are 7 things you can do to learn to work much more effectively. Number 1, you need to associate a compelling outcome with the task that you're trying to accomplish. So this is something that is a problem for many people. They don't even start working because they associate it with something burdensome, unpleasant, and difficult. So what you want to do is make sure that you associate the job that you're trying to get done and be really specific about what it is you're trying to do. You associate it with something that would make your life better in precise ways. So for example, okay, I need to sit down and put together a group of demos for an album I'm trying to make, but whatever, it's too difficult, it's too big of a task, I have so many other things to do. Okay, so you need to be really precise about, well, I'd like to get these demos done so that I can post something on my SoundCloud page, or that I can put something on YouTube so that I can share these recordings with other people and just show what I've been up to for the last year, or just so that I can make a little bit of progress with this project that's really important to me. Or it could be, I need to finish this piece, or I need to finish writing this book so that hopefully further chains of opportunities will come my way. But if I don't finish anything, that's not going to happen. But it's like, if you finish a project and you finish it well, who knows what could be the result of that? You know, who knows what other opportunities could come your way? So come up with some really specific ways that this will be an improvement to your life if you could make progress with this one thing. Number 2, remove obstacles. So this is actually something that's relatively easy to do, but it takes a bit of self-awareness. So if there are reasons why you're not actually getting down to work, it could be that you don't have a space set up in your apartment or house. It could be that you don't have all the materials you need. It might be that your desk is in a complete mess and you're just completely horrified every time you see it. So try to be really precise about, well, what are the reasons that I might not be getting down to work? What are the things I might need in order to be able to sit down and work effectively? In my case, and this took an embarrassingly long time to figure out, but there were certain materials that I needed to get my work done. I needed a good metronome, I needed good pencils, good erasers, decent paper. It's like really simple stuff. It's not expensive materials or anything like that, but they needed to be a certain way. You know, there's a wonderful story about the composer Morton Feldman, who said that if I could only just find the right office chair, I would rival Mozart. And it's a joke, obviously, but it's also kind of true. It's like if you had, you know, the setup, the materials that you needed, then you wouldn't need to worry about those things and you could just get down to work. Number 3, prioritize cognitively demanding tasks. So what you want to do is front load your day so that you do the most difficult, the most demanding tasks right away when you wake up. And I know this doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and it's totally counterintuitive for a lot of people, but it's incredibly effective. If you're a creative type especially, think of it this way. It's like you've got an existential obligation to get some writing done, to practice this craft, this art every day, ideally every day, in some kind of a regular fashion. But if you sort of start your day doing 100 other things and then you leave it until the last part of the day when you're completely exhausted, the odds that you're going to have a good experience and that you're going to be able to work effectively are very low. The reason for that is that creative tasks are intensely cognitively demanding. You need to be sharp, you need to be focused, you need to be alert in order to do that. Why? Because your entire being needs to be brought to bear upon the creative process. And if you're like most people, and you probably are, you should assume that you are, you're going to be at your best early in the morning. So a lot of people will say, especially students, you know, I'm at my sharpest between midnight and 4 a.m., you know, I'm a night owl, this kind of thing. I don't really buy that. And in my experience, if you can get used to working early in the morning before you've done anything else, maybe even before breakfast, just like get up at 6 in the morning, get up at 7 in the morning and do an hour of writing or 2 hours of writing or whatever you can manage with your schedule, then I guarantee you, if you do that on a regular basis, you'll make regular progress and you'll get a lot closer to your goals. Number 3B, if you're tired of working, go outside and take a walk, like I'm doing right now in Monaco. Number 4, break the task down into very small steps. And that means setting the bar very low. A lot of the reason why many people don't even get started is because they think, well, whatever I produce has to be at a certain level. It's like, I'm not going to bother writing if I can't produce something that's as good as ... you name the artist. So what you want to do is set incredibly easy to reach goals for yourself. So for example, don't have some like vague goal, oh, I want to sit down and work on this piece and I want it to be an amazing piece. That's not a specific goal. What you want to do is think, well, I want to make progress with these 2 bars of my piece, or I want to just write a few notes of a melody, or I just want to find 2 chords that I like, or something like that. And then if that's still something that you're hesitating about, you're kind of not really sure you want to sit down and do that, set the bar even lower. It's like, well, what's the easiest task that I can possibly think of for which there would be absolutely no reason to have any degree of resistance? And that's where you should set the bar. So it might be something like if you're really resisting the task and you're just not getting down to work, maybe it's something like, okay, I've got a bunch of sort of half-digested ideas that I wrote down a couple of weeks ago. I've got a folder of sketches. I've got, a folder on my hard drive of half-finished demos, and I'm not working on them. I'm not looking at them. Maybe the first step is just to take 5 minutes and actually set a timer. Just take 5 minutes and just look at the sketches, or just look at the file of recordings on your hard drive. Don't even work on them. Don't even organize them. Just look at them and see what happens, and you'll be surprised. When you set the bar low enough, it creates this sort of psychological trigger. It's like you're like, okay, well, I guess I can do that. And then you start to realize that you're actually capable of doing things that are slightly more difficult than that. But remember, keep it really low and really specific. Number 5, don't make to-do lists. Definitely. Look, to-do lists are completely useless. And in fact, they're counterproductive for most people. Instead of making to-do lists, this is something that I started doing a year ago. I found it really helpful for myself. What I would do is I would take a break at midday after having written the whole morning, and I'd go on a walk or I'd go have a coffee somewhere else. In my case, okay, I live right next to Germany. I live right on the border between France and Germany, so I have the chance of being able to go over to Germany and having a coffee, which is kind of fun. So what I would do is I would make a have-done list. In other words, rather than setting out, a list of all the things that I expect myself to do in that day, which is frankly, not very compelling. It's sort of like you're kind of bullying yourself into doing things that you don't want to do. What I would do was, it was kind of like a memory exercise. I tried to be really conscious and aware of how I was spending my time or how I had spent my time that morning. So I would just say, okay, well, what did I just spend the last 4.5 hours doing? I've been working since 8 in the morning. It's 12:30. What was I doing exactly? And when I started doing this, it was really interesting. I found that I actually often couldn't remember exactly what were the things that I had done. So just as a kind of mnemonic exercise, I'd say, well, okay, let's really try to be specific about this. And I would realize that, well, okay, so the first thing I did was I opened my email, and maybe I worked on a grant application for half an hour, and then I got down to writing. But what was I doing specifically? It's like, well, okay, I worked on, this section of my piece, or I worked on this harmonic layer of my piece, or whatever. I'd be really specific about that, and I'd write all those things down. Not a to-do list, a have-done list, to sort of develop that awareness, that consciousness of how I had been spending my time. And what that would then do is it would make it really clear what my aspirations were for the second part of the day. So again, not making a to-do list, but for the second part of the day, I'd say, well, I've still got about 3 or 4 hours left to work this afternoon. So what would I really like to get done? What would I really like to accomplish? What would increase my sense of fulfillment, my sense that I had used the day well? And I would write those things down. I'd say, well, so here's what I spent my morning doing. And if the afternoon were to go incredibly well, here's a bunch of things I'd like to make some progress with. And I would write those things down. But this is really important. It would not be a to-do list. It would be a list of aspirations. And I would have no expectation that I would do all of these things. I would just try to cultivate awareness and just sort of remember the many different things that I've got going on simultaneously and that I'd like to make a bit of progress with. And if I do one thing on that list, that's fantastic. Number 6, there is no such thing as writer's block. So just banish that idea from your mind forever. What writer's block actually is a failure of nerve. And what people often do is they refuse to write because, again, they think it has to be at a certain level. And if they can't reach that level, then there's no point in even starting. So I'll tell you a story. When I was living in Spain around 2012, 2013, I was having a difficult time creatively because I was completely retooling compositionally. I was really redeveloping my technique, and also I was being exposed to a lot of things aesthetically that were really changing my artistic outlook. So one of the things that I did to try to get beyond this and try to just start working was, first of all, two things. I write for the wastebasket. So I made this deal with myself that for a week, for 2 weeks, I was not going to keep anything that I wrote. Everything I wrote was going to go straight in the garbage. And that had an incredibly liberating effect, psychologically speaking. It meant that there was nothing riding on the work. It didn't matter what I wrote. It just mattered that I got into the kind of the energy of continuously producing and continuously just putting things down on paper. But I didn't have to worry about the quality. It could be absolutely terrible. It could be so embarrassing that you would be mortified if anyone saw what you were producing, but nobody's going to see it. And I'm not going to see it a second time because it's going straight in the garbage. I did that for a while. And by the end of that, I had this incredible looseness, this feeling like, okay, I'll try it. I'll try anything and we'll just see what happens. We'll see what emerges out of this process. And if it's any good, I'll keep it. And if it's not, then that's fine. So desanctify the creative process. The other thing that I did when I was living in Spain, and I found this weirdly effective, was I completely stopped fetishizing the sort of materials that I was working with. It's like this idea that you have to have a certain kind of paper, you have to have a certain type of pencil or whatever. What I did was I went to dollar stores in Madrid and I just got stacks of 50-cent notebooks and 10-cent ball pens and stuff like this. And that's what I worked with for a long time. I used, really cheap Bic pens and yellow foolscap stationery, with lines on it and things like that. And that was really effective too, because it was materials that had no sort of aura around them at all. And you would just feel nothing about throwing them out. It didn't matter. So desanctify the creative process. Don't expect much of yourself. Throw your ideas in the garbage, use cheap materials, whatever you need to sort of lower the bar so that you have no expectations whatsoever. And that will remove your inhibitions. Number 7, you don't work as much as you think you do. This is something that you need to get used to. And you can discover this really quickly if you work with a timer, which is something I recommend. So set a stopwatch on your desk, and just what you can do is, okay, when you're aware that you're focusing, you're really working, you're really writing, you're really present, you start the timer. And as soon as you get distracted and do another task, whatever it is, email, Facebook, making a phone call, anything, you stop the timer. It's that simple. So a lot of people have this idea that, well, I spent 6 hours in my office or in my room or at my desk. So, I spent 6 hours working on my piece. I spent 6 hours, being creative. And it's like, well, probably that's not true. Let's be really, really precise and realistic about how much time you're actually devoting to these difficult tasks. And what you'll probably find is, you're going to be stopping the timer a lot. So the idea behind this is to become aware of how you're using your time. It's not to punish yourself, but simply to be realistic about the fact that, if you're like most people, probably the upper limit of how much time you can spend on a really difficult creative task is probably on the order of 2 or 3 hours. In all likelihood, with a bunch of distractions and a bunch of things that you're doing in between. So what you can then do is say, well, what if I were to optimize that time? Rather than having this false idea that I can sit down for 6 hours and just work in a sort of uninterrupted stream of brilliance, what if I were to say, realistically, I can probably do 1 hour or maybe even half an hour of really demanding creative work. And you set aside that time and be really specific about doing it. Be really focused, be really disciplined, don't get distracted. How long can you sustain that for, realistically, so that you associate the task with something stimulating and exciting? It's not something unpleasant. It's not something that you feel you have to keep stopping doing. Maybe the upper limit of that is an hour. Maybe it's 3 hours. I don't know. And it's true that in exceptional circumstances, sometimes you're late with a piece, or you have to write a lot in a short amount of time. Maybe you need to go beyond that. But in terms of establishing a sustainable daily practice that allows you to make consistent progress with your creative endeavors, probably for most people, 3 hours is about the upper limit. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this helpful or interesting, please don't hesitate to subscribe and to like the video. And of course, if you want to go deeper, please know that I work with a wide range of composers on Zoom. I offer composition lessons, analysis lessons, and also consulting for creative people who are hoping to improve their efficiency. So don't hesitate to get in touch. You'll find my contact details on my website, www.samuelandreyev.com. And again, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.